Welcome back to An Hour to Give with Sam Laprade on 1310 News.
I love talking about partnerships. And of course, we had Ian. Ian, you're back, which is so good. And you brought your friend Glenn Sheen from RBC. Hello.
Hello.
And so tell me about this partnership. How did it start, Ian?
Actually, it started with a phone call from Glenn. Glenn was, this is right at the start of, I think, RBC launching the Future launch. If I can use launch twice there. And he was looking into the now RBC Spirit of the Capital Awards as part of how do we recognize outstanding youth and support them in their career growth. So it was a wonderful first call to take.
Absolutely. And you know I'm a big fan of yours, Glenn, and having an opportunity to be at a number of events with you through the year, and really that commitment to youth has been huge for you. What was it like to make that call, knowing that you were probably going to change the lives of many people with that call?
You know, we were launching Future Launch, which I know we'll talk about in a few minutes, and we were looking for, what organizations in Ottawa were actually doing good work around youth. And, doing a quick Google search, we found Youth Ottawa. We had never heard about them. We had never partnered with them, but we were like, hey, let's give Ian a call and see what he's up to. And it's actually turned into, what's it now been, 2 or 3 years?
We're going into the third
year.
Yeah.
And only do we sponsor the Spirit of the Capital Awards, we actually fund and have funded a number of programs with them. So it's been a really beneficial partnership on both sides of the equation.
Yeah, and if I may, I think what's really cool about this is that Google optimization, I can only say because of a young person did that for us. and it's a really cool full circle story because Ibrahim Musa, who we've had on before with you, he runs Cuts for Kids, but we brought him on as our communications coordinator. He's the only reason that we currently have a social media following.
Wow.
And I remember him spending a whole bunch of time, the spring before the fall when you called me, working on our Google optimization. Like, what are you doing?
And why are you doing it?
And why are you doing it?
And it's led to this.
And it's led to this. And in turn, through the RBC Foundation gift for our Amplified Fellowship, we've been able to hire on Ibrahim further to work on Cuts for Kids to the point where he's now starting to earn significant revenues in running that initiative. So I think that's just really cool. The foundation of this wasn't to not quite so young guys anymore. Coming together, but the foundation was really that young person recognizing the importance of Google optimization when this not quite so young person didn't.
Right. I love that story because it's really another way that youth can infuse some of their knowledge and some of the things that they would know stuff about that maybe it's not on our radar yet.
Absolutely.
So we have to say the fact that Glenn called you never happens in nonprofit world, right? I mean, that was a very special day for you.
That was very special.
Did you sort of sit back and go, my prayers have been answered?
Actually, the first thing I said was, it was a lovely call, first of all. But the second thing was like, oh, what do I do now?
Right.
That was my first thought. And it was cool because we had a good long time to talk about shared values. And I think as important as the sponsorship for the Spirit Awards have been, Glenn and I were just talking about this, it was one of the kind of, one conversation we had early sitting down was one of the two biggest moments of me and my executive director life. And it was, I've been struggling with this idea of a model program we ran, which was for youth by youth, but it was predominantly on a volunteer basis. And Glenn was able to come in with kind of the information behind, the research behind Future Launch, talk about what we need to be doing is investing in young people. Right, we need to be investing in them from not just their development, but also in them from an economic, giving a job standpoint. And that was kind of a catalytic moment for me. And since we started moving more in towards a for youth by youth model, where instead of looking at young people like Ibrahim Musa from the point of view of what he's doing on a volunteer basis, but from how can we support you with jobs, the difference between his impact on the community has been astronomically different. And we see that now in the way that young people go and run our programs in schools for other youth. The results are off the charts when we actually invest in young people. So that was, I think one of the most important things that came from that was that conversation that we had very early on.
It's really interesting because a lot of time as nonprofits, we sort of go to corporations for funding, right? We're like, show us the money, right? Which I love this story because it's so much more about than that. I mean, this is about almost a mentorship role as well, which is ironic because that's really what Youth Ottawa is about.
Right. Yeah. And it worked out really well because I think, being a business, we can actually have some of those conversations. Say, hey, this is, what's your business model? How does it come sustaining? And when we think about investing from RBC Foundation, it really is about the best of the best that we want to make sure we're having an impact. It's just not pure charity.
Agreed.
It's actually making sure that we put a rigorous process around, hey, where can we put, as stewards of, again, we're investing Canadians' money really at the end of the day. Where can we have the biggest impact, right? So we do, and it is a separate part of our business, really. I have somebody full-time who, that's his full-time job, that, reads the applications, and it's not the sunshine and rainbows part of it. It really is the show me the impact of where these dollars are going and how you can measure those impacts. Right?
Absolutely. And I think from our earlier conversation, and to be clear, Sam, we still do go and say, hey, we'd like some money.
Of course.
Let's be clear. But through the Amplified Fellowship, for example, we ran last year, we brought in a whole bunch of young social innovators and gave them access to an entrepreneur. The whole goal was exactly that. How can we take investments in young people and translate the tools they need to bring in their own revenues for their own initiatives? And I'm really happy to report that since we started working with 6 of these groups last year, they've been able to bring in over $160,000 for their initiatives, which I think is outstanding, right? And they're able to start employing themselves in their initiatives and scaling that even further. But it comes down to this, you talked about mentorship and kind of how it scales down. I think that the perfect model of mentorship is almost like a Russian nesting doll. And where, Glenn had a conversation with me, I had that conversation with Ibrahim, and now what's really cool is Ibrahim and one of our colleagues, Brenda, are now working in schools to run a social enterprise pilot project for careers classes.
Wow.
Where they can take their expertise gained and go and work with high school students through careers classes in the Ottawa Carleton District School Board and help young people develop their career aspirations by doing a social enterprise project. So it's this beautiful mentorship model, like a Russian nesting doll, and it works so well.
And if we think about the long-term effects of that, we're setting them up for success in the job market of the future, right?
Yes.
We know that the disruption that's going to happen. Most people won't work at the same company for 20, 30 years.
Right.
They're going to be probably in and out of being self-employed, employed, blah, blah, blah. So setting up entrepreneurship skills as a core skill that they have is key.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think at the Community Foundation's last New Leaf Community Challenge, a comment was made about an entrepreneurial program. Well, how can we realistically ask, particularly youth who face barriers, to engage in entrepreneurial practices? Because it requires a lot of sacrifice they might not be able to make. Is that ethical? And I think what we're doing is through this program and through the support that we've been, the partnership we've been working with RBC Foundation and RBC, is we're creating a safe space for those skills to be acquired, because so much of what they're doing, no matter where they go, will require that entrepreneurship. And at the foundation, entrepreneurship, whether social or otherwise, is about problem solving. It's about finding things that you care about, understanding the limitations there, and innovating your way around that. And so to the ability that we can bring to now high school students, to youth like Ibrahim, like that's what makes me jump out of bed in the morning and get going.
Absolutely. I think that, the opportunity for you to come together and really support youth is key. Tell me about the Spirit of the Capital Awards is one thing. What are the other things you're funding?
We're funding across a whole bunch of partners, right? There's post-secondary education institutions, there's Operation Come Home, there's Youth Services Bureau. We're going to be looking at youth mental health, right? Because resiliency and access to care is really important in this climate of change. I'm trying to think of where else.
Association of Fundraising Professionals.
Mentorship program. So really it's like from a micro to a macro, Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Futurepreneur, SheEO, Rocket Business Case, right? Actua, getting girls into STEM, right? This is there's a depth of opportunities that we can do, but we've tried to pick the best of the best, which is why we partnered with Youth Ottawa.
Absolutely. Youth Ottawa is a real, as you know, you're a favorite of mine. I just love the impact that you're making. When you reach out to corporate partners, what are you really looking for to make sure that it's a win-win for them? What do you offer corporate partners?
Well, we approach this from the same way that you approach like any customer, right? We really understand, what are you trying to get out of this? Like what are the gains you're looking to create? What are the pains you're looking to solve or have solved? And so that's the approach we're taking there. How can we do business with you? Because we want to make sure for long-term sustainability, the first time we work together on something isn't going to be as good as the fourth or fifth iteration of that. And the more that we can make sure that we're on the same page for meeting needs, the more opportunities we give ourselves to iteratively build together. I think also like the example of RBC when they've come in the sector. So I've sat around a lot of roundtables, right, as we try to talk about collective impact. And we're in a sector that is perennially cash strapped. What I really appreciate about the way the Future Launch has come into the sector is that it hasn't just been funding, although it's been very significant funding. I think it's $500 million over 10 years. Is that correct? Yep. But it's how it was deliberately done. It had a very good thought piece behind it around the Humans Wanted report. But even equally importantly, it was how it brought people together. So we're now sitting on like the Partnering for Success in Youth Employment, and we start to see the folks who are gathering around the table there. I think that level of direction and kind of coordination probably isn't there unless we have those very well-funded and very well-thought-out funders coming into the sector.
It's a really important piece. I would love Glenn to stay with me. Is that okay with you?
I think that's okay.
Ian Bigeman, thank you so much for your time today. And Glenn Sheen, RBC, you're going to stick with me because I want to hear about your experience with the actual RBC Spirit of the Capital Awards. And if you've ever attended, stay with us to hear the answer to that. Stay with us on An Hour to Give.